So what we've been talking about so far to this point in Unit 6 is the history of the Earth. How old is the Earth? Why do scientists think that organisms have changed? What do they have as evidence for the Earth having been here a long time and for organisms having changed a lot? And so that was your stratigraphic columns and your drill cores and things like that. What we're going to start talking about today is how organisms can change over time. And the best theory, the theory that is the most accepted theory for evolution, is Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. Right? Charles Darwin was a scientist who sailed around the world, and as he sailed around the world, he gathered information from all over the planet about organisms and how they were different. And as evidence came in from fossils in the history, this was during the time where people were just getting really into paleontology, and Darwin took all this information and he looked at where organisms lived and what kind of pressures were on them and how they needed to survive in their environment. And he noticed things like organisms that were the best adapted to their environment are the ones that were surviving. They were the ones that were thriving and were actually getting to reproduce and have babies. And so a lot of people consider his theory, the theory of natural selection, to be survival of the fittest, right? And so what we're going to be talking about today is how his theory works, how he thinks organisms that are the best adapted to their environment survive, and how those adaptations, that one thing that makes an organism just a little bit better than those that it is competing against, how it helps them survive and reproduce, and why those traits, that adaptation that makes them better, that trait gets passed on. So what causes evolution? First thing is that there is variation. All right, we talked about that in genetics. And a variation is are genetic differences in individuals of the same species. So when we talked about genetics, we saw this in very simple traits like whether or not you have a hitchhiker's thumb, okay, or whether or not you have a widow's peak. And every organism within a species has lots of different genetic variations. That's why when you look around at humans around you, there's so many different types. Different skin colors, different sizes, different heights, different leg lengths, different arm lengths, you name it, you can see the differences. And so all species have variation like this. Now, also, all species compete. We talked about that in ecology. Okay, when organisms live together, they're going to compete against each other for resources in order to survive and reproduce. One of the examples were like during the mating season, the bucks fight each other, all right? The strongest buck wins. The one with the biggest set of antlers, the most muscle mass, that's going to be the buck that wins and gets to have babies. When you're talking about like birds of paradise, the prettiest bird, the bird that does the best dance, the one that is the most attractive to the female, that's going to be the one that gets to reproduce. The faster the cheetah, okay, the fast cheetah gets the food. Okay, what's going to happen to a slow cheetah? If you have a slow cheetah, it's not going to catch any food. If it doesn't catch any food, it starves to death. That slow cheetah doesn't make babies. But the fast cheetah gets plenty of food. Okay, and so all organisms are competing. The best ones are the ones that survive. And so they are the ones that have an adaptation. Now, an adaptation is an inherited feature that increases an organism's chance for survival. Like with the cheetah, speed. The faster faster that cheetah is, the more likely it is to catch food. All right, so its inherited feature that increases its chance of survival is being very, very fast. Like I said, slow cheetahs disappear. If you're an antelope and a cheetah's chasing you, you want to be fast. Faster antelopes survive. Slower ones, they're dinner. Okay. Other adaptations would be things like camouflage. All right. Lions, or even better, tigers. Tigers are ambush predators. Their stripes let them hide in the tall grasses. And if they're real still and real quiet, their prey gets really close to them, so they can jump out and get them. So camouflage. Prey likes to be camouflaged too, so that they can hide and not get caught. Okay? But it's any feature that can be passed from one generation to the next, inherited, that helps you stay alive and survive. And so over time, because of variation, and there's lots of differences, and because organisms compete for those resources and only the best ones actually survive, and because sometimes you have a feature that makes you better at staying alive, okay, natural selection happens. And that is when a natural process results in the survival and reproductive success of organisms that are best adapted to their environment. Survival of the fittest. And so the ones that are the best stay alive, since they have an inherited feature that lets them survive. When they have babies, that inherited feature passes to their babies. And now the babies will have it too. And any feature that's not good, that organism dies. So that feature disappears. The feature that's good gets passed on. And so over time, species can change as features change based on some disappearing and some continuing on. And this is an example. And this example, it looks a little bit weird, but it's true. Fossil evidence shows us that giraffes used to have short necks. All right? Giraffes used to live in a place that had lots and lots and lots of grass. And so it was really easy for them just to lean down and get plenty to eat, or they had little bushes. But then their environment started changing, and they live in a more desert environment. And so the things that keep green leaves all year long are trees. All right? So we used to have some short-necked giraffes. Some of them were kind of in between. Some giraffes had long necks. They just already did, just by happen. Okay? And so the variation was that some giraffes had longer necks than others. Then their environment changed. There was not a lot of grass on the ground. You did have a lot of trees with leaves up high. And so it ended up being that having a longer neck was an adaptation. So longer neck giraffes can reach the leaves and get the food easier. Okay? So these long neck giraffes are getting food, while this poor little short neck giraffe over here, the one that can't reach the leaves, unfortunately he starves to death. So short neck is dead, long necks are surviving. So over time, short necks disappear, and all you have left is long necks. So if you look up here, you have about 50-50. 50% of them are long neck, 50% of them are short neck. Then wait a little while, some of the short necks have started dying. 75% are long neck, 25% are short necked. And then give it a little bit more time, and the short necks have disappeared, because it's trees where giraffes are eating. That's where they're getting their food to survive. And so long necks are all we have left. So over time, only giraffes with long necks are still alive to have babies. And so their babies will have long necks, and the short neck will disappear, and all we have is long necks. This is a very basic example, but this is really pretty much how evolution happens through natural selection. Traits disappear when they're not helpful or when they're actually harmful, like having a short neck. And other traits become very, very prevalent, and then they become the only thing left over time when they are helpful. So survival of the fittest. All giraffes have long necks.